There's a difference between speaking and having your audience riveted in what you're doing and actually making money doing it. And I think that the hardest for me was to transition. How do I turn around and monetize those speaking opportunities, especially once I had my own company without pitch slapping the audience?
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nusky. I'm your host. I'm also the luckiest person alive because I have the opportunity to speak with some incredible people, and today is no different. I'm on the line with Sue Henry. Now, before we go any further and start our conversation with Sue, I just want to reach out and say thank you so very much for your positive support for the show. It is making a great deal of difference. It's humbling, and I thank you very, very much for that feedback. Now, Sue, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Rick. And, I've been reading some of the testimonials of the people that you've had on and some of the listeners and what they've had to say. And I want to thank you. The world is filled with doom and gloom, and not just because of the pandemic, but, there's always people who are looking, it's like they're looking for fault and criticizing people like they're going to get a medal for it. And you take the opposite approach where you look for the good, you find the good, and then you highlight and bring the good to others. And I want to thank you. We need more voices like that.
Oh, thank you. That again, that is very humbling for me because this is a passion of mine. I realised that there was a way to use podcasting as that I guess that vehicle to get the message out there and help those who are not only successful and want to grow, but those who are starting out, because I think there's a lot of challenges. And I guess that's a really good segue to jump into your background, your profession in terms of professional speaking and how you serve your clientele. Could you, before we do that though, so could you share a little bit about yourself, things that you like to do when you're not focused on that, where you're located and that sort of thing with the My Future Business audience?
Perfect. So I live in southeastern Minnesota in the U.S., and I sometimes call it Minnesota. So besides being a speaker, we have 6 kids, all who have grown, yes, and moved out. And we have 6 adorable grandchildren that almost made worth it having 5 daughters go through those teenage years. And we're organic grass only dairy farmers. And
Fantastic.
so I even have my own tractor and drive, tractor and seed and, and haul hay and cut hay and stuff. But
Hmm.
I don't know how to milk cows because a good wife would learn that, but a smart wife knows better.
That's so wonderful. This topic that we're talking about today, Sue, is one that is often filled with fear. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about psychology behind I guess, the art of speaking to a crowd and some of the modalities, which I wasn't even aware of that I was doing myself. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the stages that you've shared and the people that you've shared them with.
I have been really, really blessed. And I just want to come out and say that if you look to be on a stage, then you need to get started. And if you've got that dream in your heart, then if you start taking the steps on that path, things will open up for you in a way to make that happen. And it's never an overnight journey. It just never, ever is. And to
No.
be honest with you, the first stage I spoke on, I literally fell off. And and I was much younger then, and I weighed a lot less, and mini skirts were in, and I fell off the stage wearing this mini skirt. And when
Oh.
they said, "Are you okay?" I was so embarrassed and mortified. The only thing I could think of to say was, "Did my underwear show?" Well,
Oh.
of course it did. It was a mini skirt. I mean, serious. And that was at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles.
Oh
So the
my.
good news is nobody else ever saw me. But that kind of put the stop to my dream of being a speaker for a couple of decades. Well, we all go through different seasons in life. And what happened then was, I got married, I started having children. Like I said, we have 6 kids.
Hmm.
And it wasn't, and I wanted to be a speaker, and I started working for an organization. And I was actually a mortgage lender, and then I got recruited into the spot where I did a lot of coaching and training for our area in our region. And are you familiar with BNI, Business Network International?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that's how I got started, and eventually I started. I had this gift for writing workshops, and we had to give 10-minute workshops, and we had to deliver them to the chapter members every 6 to 8 weeks. And so I started small, but because of the impact that they were having on just my area kept growing. So by the time that I was really speaking internationally, I already was in charge of 700 members. I had a team of 16. I did a lot of the writing, but because of the results, because of the recruiting, because of the amount of referrals that were passed, because of the way they were able to tap into their network and really grow their business, not
Hmm.
just doing business with each other, but tapping into each other's networks, all of a sudden, that's what landed me on bigger stages. And I became a favorite, probably because I'm so quirky and because who thinks a farmer is going to be on stage, you know? But I think that it was one of those things. And so it was being in those national and international events that I got to share the stage with Jack Canfield and Brian Tracy. And actually, we're all in a #1 New York Times bestseller together, along with Oprah and a bunch of other people. So I got to share the stage with them, with Ivan Misner, with the founder of BNI, with Lisa Nichols, no matter what, she's big from The Secret, Janet Attwood, the passion
Wow.
test, if you're familiar with that. Bob Burg, the go-giver. That man is awesome and incredible. Stephen J.R. Covey, just M.R.G. Covey,
Yes.
Speed of Trust, Keith Ferrazzi, Never Eat Alone. I mean, so I had the opportunity to not just be there and get to hobnob because I was one of the speakers, although they were the big names, let's
Yep.
keep this
Yep.
straight. But no one ever made me feel less than important or that my message was less than what theirs were, even though they had attained ranks I hadn't. And I think that that was one of the really big takeaways I got, was that they were always willing to step in and help, give advice. If you had a question, they were always open, they were always approachable.
Yep.
And I thought, that's what true leadership is. That's what true success is. Those aren't people who are hoarding it in and thinking there's a scarcity. These are people who, hey, this is how we're doing it, and sharing it with you so that you can have that kind of success. And that's the kind of speaker and leader and coach I want to be.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. I have some, I guess some process related things, some psychological
Mhm.
related discussion topics I'd like to cover. But first of all, I would love to talk about the experience and how it made you feel at that time, the very first time you stepped off of a stage and it went well for you.
It was an adrenaline rush like no other. See, it's one thing to speak and have your audience there, but when all of a sudden you put yourself to the side where you're only focused on them, you forget about yourself. You forget about your own fears and your insecurities and maybe what dress size you wear. And if you're having a bad hair, all of that stuff goes to the side because you're so focused on giving value and helping them walk away from that 20 or 25-minute talk in a better place than they were when they came. So when you see those light bulbs going on, it was it was humbling, it was edifying, and it was one of the few times in life I think I was ever speechless.
Ironically, I wonder,
Yeah.
once you got that momentum and there was those positive experiences, were those things, those positive experiences, something that you were able to carry on in life off the stage? Did it help you gain confidence?
It did. It helped me see my own value, because like I said, we had 5 teenage girls, and I don't know if you've had teenage girls, but there is nothing anyone could say to you that's worse than an angry teenage girl says to her mother. And
Can only
when
imagine.
and when you're hearing that kind of stuff and you're not getting, I wasn't getting outside validation or whatever. And sure, I should have been able to do it myself, but I needed to know that I was at least making some kind of an impact. And that gave me the confidence to sit a little taller, speak a little bit more boldly instead of just, trying to make myself invisible in a corner. It so whether it was at church, whether I was, doing something with the kids, whatever that was, it gave me a confidence and a spring in my step that I didn't always have, and that meant a lot. But I also want to make sure they understand something. Your audience understands something else. There's a difference between speaking and having your audience riveted in what you're doing and actually making money
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the so what was the hardest for me was to transition. How do I turn around and monetize those speaking opportunities, especially once I had my own company, without pitch slapping the audience, because people aren't going to tolerate that. They're not polite like they used to be. You know,
Hmm.
they'll get out their phones or they'll just get up and walk away. And that was much harder than even creating a talk that had my audience captivated.
Yes, that's wonderful feedback. I wonder. I'm putting myself in your shoes as a speaker, and I'm just about to step up those 3 steps to go onto the stage. Is there some sort of psychological upshifting that you have to make, or do you just go in and just do your thing? How does it? How does the process work?
I do it before I talk. So I always make sure that I am there at least 30 minutes, you know, depending on when the event's starting, at least 30 minutes before I'm going to speak. And I start talking to people in the audience who are milling about. And I go in and and I don't say, oh, I'm the speaker. I'll go in and I say, I'm so excited you're here today. I'm really curious. What what brought you here today, or what are you excited to learn from the speaker, and that kind of a thing. And then once they tell me, I say, I'm so excited to hear that I am the speaker, and that's one of the things I'm going to be covering. So I just want to go and talk to a few more people, but thank you so much for your feedback. So I make sure that I do that with 6 or 7 people ahead of time. I don't just stay talking to one person.
Hmm.
And then when I get on stage, because you've taken the time, because they always see you as this expert, you know,
Yep.
already, and
Yep.
some kind of a, um, you know, credibility and all this other mini celebrity, maybe even. So by the time you get up there, when you smile at these people, you've already got a raving fan base of these
Yes.
people who are smiling and clapping because you introduced yourself. And I got to tell you, that is so much easier to do that and get up when you've got that kind of rapport already built with a few people than to just walk in and think that you're going to wow them from the beginning. And maybe you will, but for me, it was hard to get me in that state of mind if
Yes.
I didn't visit with them first.
Yeah, that's some powerful insight for everybody who's on the call today, because this prior planning prevents poor performance, almost, isn't it? I,
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
wonder. Is it more important to have a script, or is it more important when you're giving a presentation, a talk, to know your topic?
That's kind of a loaded question. So I'm gonna tell you the Sue Henry version, and then you can take from with it what it is. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I believe that you should have a script that, and you create one signature talk,
Hmm.
and you bring in. So I teach my clients that they should have a lead magnet that has 10 to 15 tips on it, but you're just telling the what's, not the how. So it's only going to be maybe 2 pages at the max.
Right.
And so what I do is I choose. So when I created my talk, I already knew who my ideal clients were. I already knew what their pain was, what solution they wanted. But just as importantly, I knew the desired results. What's their happily ever after? Because that's what I need to include in my stories.
Yeah.
So knowing that most places when you speak are going to be, you know, a 20 to 30-minute talk, you create your signature talk and you pull in 3 pieces that are going to be really powerful as from your lead magnet into your talk, and then you go in depth in those with stories. So each one is a story, and then you seed it so it's really easy. So you want people to realize you're giving them a lot, but you're not trying to hold back just so that they'll opt in. So here's another tip, is between the second and the third tip, I always wear a watch. And I look at my watch and I just tap it. I want them to see I'm looking at my watch, and I'll go, you know, there's so much more I want to share with you, but our time is limited. I want to honor your time and
Hmm.
the time that I've been given on stage. So let's dive into the last tip I've got for you then today. And and now all of a sudden the clock is the enemy, So when I'm seeding and I'm telling them that this is tip number 13 or tip number 12 from a top 15 tips to speak your way to success, I've already said that enough times, 3 or 4 times, that because I'm pulling it from that lead magnet, so that when I ask them to opt in for that lead magnet, it's normal, if you've chosen your audience carefully, that you're going to get 70-80% of the audience to opt in. And
Yep.
there's a key to do that too. So if you go back to, I believe in having a signature talk that's directly related to your lead magnet, so that when they get your lead magnet, everything is cohesive. And then because you've got 10 or 15 tips on this lead magnet, it makes perfect sense to develop your email sequence where you're going deeper into each one of those tips. And then you're having your ask within there. And just because you're asking every single time, that doesn't mean you're always asking them for a sale. You're conditioning them to know you're going to ask them to do something. So when you do ask for a sale, it doesn't come out of left field.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It means a great deal for the My Future Business audience, because we are startup entrepreneurs, we are small to medium-sized business owners too. I wonder, what are some of the formats for speaking? Is it just on stage? And tell us a little bit about some of the
No,
formats that you can use.
I think, stage is great, but a lot of my clients have an issue where they've got a 9 to 5 job, or they've got kids that are doing all these other things. So even though there's over 7,000 speaking gigs in the US alone each and every weekday, that doesn't mean it's going to be filled with your ideal clients, or that it's going to be easy for you to get to that speaking gig. I live in the middle of nowhere. Most of mine were at least a 2-hour drive. And
Hmm.
that's where podcasts have become so extremely incredible, because there's already an audience built in. Obviously, you want to choose your podcast with care, but
Hmm.
then it gives you the opportunity to have a conversation like we're doing, instead of preaching at people. And then you can still seed it with some of the things that you teach, so that those who are interested can still reach out to learn more. Plus, the other thing I love is that, if you speak, you're one and done. Whereas if you're on a podcast, these episodes are there forever. So you may have a listener, Rick, who finds you in 3 or 4 years, and yet this podcast is still something they can come across. So that's one way. I think Facebook Lives are really good, because you still want to have the same format. You don't want to get up there and go, well, I just thought I'd hop on here today. That doesn't give anybody a lot of confidence in your ability and your skills, right? And or you've got the HGTV, or you've got the IGTVs, you've got there's a lot of teleseminars, there's webinars. And I really like that there's a few people who have taken Russell Brunson's 90-minute perfect webinar and
Hmm.
converted that more into a 30-minute webinar that's a little bit more palatable for people, in order to move them to the next level for their funnel. And so there's, you've got so many different ways that people can speak. And then you can still have your own events if you want to have that, have your own TV shows that are online. So there's plenty of opportunities.
Yes, no, speaking is speaking regardless, isn't it?
Pardon?
Speaking is speaking, isn't it, really? When we break away this whole traditional, I'm on stage thing, people start to recognize, as I did, hey, speaking is speaking. It doesn't matter what platform that you're on.
That's right. Yeah, what really matters is who's your audience. Once you understand who your audience is and what they're looking for, the platform itself doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, is it possible for somebody who is extremely introverted to become successful at speaking?
I believe so. I think that what happens is that when they understand that, and this, I've had a few clients who have been very introverted, and they were just scared, thinking this wasn't going to work. And I'm not going to say that you don't get butterflies. Maybe you even get so scared you throw up before you speak to begin with.
Hmm.
But once that transition, it's that mental game, like you mentioned before, where you're turning around and you're thinking, what am I delivering and how am I doing it? And how am I serving them? You get out of your own way. And when you see the audience responding to what you're saying and taking notes and things like that, it's easy to put that aside, and then your legs start shaking and you wanna pass out afterward. But you've gotten through you've gotten through that
Yeah.
process of being afraid. So I think that having a signature talk, so what I suggest to my clients is that they create this signature talk, and it has the stories and stuff, and then you go through it and you say it in its entirety at least 10 times, probably the morning before you're speaking or the night before. You want to do it that quickly. You want to do it 10 times out loud in its entirety. And here's why: is that way when you're speaking, it's so fresh in your mind and the flow is there where
Hmm.
you didn't keep stopping, that even if you stumble a little bit, even if you forget something, it's going to be easy to pick up. And that's much better than trying to memorize something and have it and then forgetting it. And a lot of places you can have little keynotes or have just pictures put on a PowerPoint that will remind you of what you're going to next. And and visual reminders are really, really powerful rather than just all the words. So
Yes.
there's a lot of things you can do that way. If you're introverted and you're not sure what to do and you're afraid you're going to freeze, there's things like, I don't know, there's teleprompters. So I use one called Big View. I don't know if, and it's paid. I don't even know how much it is, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, but it's one of those things where you write out your script, you upload your script, and then it'll do the video, and then it has the script right there, and then it'll automatically add captions and things like
Hmm.
that if you want to. And one of the things that's powerful about that is that instead of having to worry about holding notes, if you're going to be on a podcast, if you're going to be doing an IGTV or YouTube video or any of those types of things,
Hmm.
the text doesn't show up, but the video, you're looking at the camera and it doesn't sound like you're having a heart attack.
It's not artificial. I'm familiar with the teleprompter process. They're quite powerful if you can, I guess, get the flow. You talked a little bit before about, reading the crowd. How important is intuition about reading a crowd, and is it okay to pivot away from your, I guess, your standard talk if you find that the audience isn't responding?
I do not believe in moving away from your standard talk. You might have to modify it a little bit, but
Hmm.
you want to keep the main thing, because that's what the event planner brought you in for.
Yes.
So if you deviate too much from that, the event planner isn't going to be happy. Plus, if you've chosen your audience well, then they're going to respond. And so stories play a great big part in your talk. But there's going to be times when you're going to get in front of an audience. So, for instance, I spoke in is St. Louis, and it was just, it was a group of like 400, and they were also having their awards banquet after me. So I think they were coming to get their awards, not necessarily just to see me. I just happened to be there, and um, and it was really well received. Well, apparently the speaker they had the year before wasn't good, and so the event planners were getting a lot of pushback. We don't want a speaker. We blah blah blah. And they said, "Come on, just give us a chance." So they brought me in, and by the time that I was done, those people were already contacting the people in Springfield, Missouri, where I was heading for the next night,
Hmm.
telling them, "Oh, she's really good. You should go." So it went from, I think, like when I started speaking in St. Louis, they only had like 25 or 30 people for the one in Springfield. And by the time I got there, and stuff like that, they had a couple of hundred people there, which was their normal size crowd. But when I got there and I got on stage, they're all sitting like this, like,
No, standoffish.
show me, show me. I'm from Missouri. You better show me that you got it.
What do you
And
got?
I thought, and I looked at him and I thought, okay, this can go one way or two ways. And so I just looked, I go, I don't know about you, but my feet are killing me, and I want to be comfortable, because then I know I'm going to give everything that I want to you guys, so that it'll benefit your businesses. So is that okay? I'm taking off my shoes. So I took off my shoes and I did the rest of the presentation in my stocking feet. And what happened is I didn't know if it would work. Okay. It was just my gut telling me, you've got to do something different, because this business as usual isn't going to work. By the time when I took off my shoes and left them on the side of the stage, and then I walked around in my stocking feet, all of a sudden they warmed up.
Yes. Because they're human beings, aren't they? They have 2 feet and a heartbeat. They've got
Yeah.
thoughts and feelings
Yeah.
and fears.
Yeah, and again, I don't know who their other speaker was, and if it was judgmental or if the speaker was shooting all over them. I don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is what I wanted to try and get them to give me a chance, and I wanted to make it so that the event planners looked really good for bringing me in, and as a result, they did.
Yes, thank you, Sue. I would love to shift gears now. We've talked a little bit about, I guess, the process, the steps, the psychology, and all these wonderful things that you need to consider. And I'm sure there is a bucket load more that you need to consider if you want to do this successfully. But when people are working with you, what sort of process do you take them through in terms of, do you do, I guess, test runs? How does the process work when you're teaching somebody to do this?
I think that when it comes to like, so first of all, we create their lead magnet, because then everything else is built upon that.
Hmm.
And so I work with them closely to do that and how to come up with it. Now, if I need to do little editing, I do. Then when it comes time for the talk, um, I'll ask them about the stories that they have that go with each of the three main points they're going to make.
Hmm.
What I do then is I actually, a lot of times when people tell a story, they talk about the solution. They don't do much for the pain, and they never talk about the happily ever after, which all of those elements are really critical for a story that compels people to take action. We have to bring those emotions into it. And so what I do is then I'll get kind of the facts a little bit, and then I'll redo the story, and then I record it so that they can hear it, so that it brings in the emotion. And every single one of them has been, oh my gosh, I could have never done it like that. But now they've got a recording that they can practice with. And they, because it's not just the words, it's the pauses. It's when you get soft and when you get loud. It's when you get slower. And when you start talking fast to get that excitement, that energy. It's about bringing all of those elements into it. And that's what really cements great speakers from average speakers, are the stories. And so we go through and we do the stories. Then the next part is now that they've got the stories, and we've kind of worked on their talk, that's all well and good. They've got that to practice on. Now what we do is we want to have a bio, but you want two bios. So the first bio is going to be one where you send it to the event planner in order to get the speaking gig. But the second one is a little bit different. So what I found in listening to all these people, being, with all these people who have these incredible credentials,
Hmm.
speaking, their bios read like this, like a resume. And the audience picks up their phone and they're scrolling. You've already lost them.
Yes.
And my goal is to create a bio that has the audience leaning forward, ready to take notes before you ever step on the stage. And so what we do is we create this different kind of bio, which I'm not going to go into
No, no.
explain it, but we create that. And then there's a couple of other things we do. So then what we want to do is there's an audience handout. And this is a free gift that you can offer to your listeners. But what it is I call it the ultimate um, handout for your audience, for speakers. And what it is it's a handout that you give ahead of time. But if you follow the instructions on this template, because I lay out the psychology of why you're doing each step, and why it's in the order it is, you're going to generate 70 to 80% of, as long as you've chosen your speaking gig correctly. So then
Hmm.
we work on that form in order to so they can hand that out to the audience, and then how to collect those leads. And then the last piece is that email sequence, because the sales don't happen, and most events are going to tell you you can't sell anyway, but most the sales aren't going to happen at that moment. Now they've said, I want more information. They give you the chance. They've opted in to start building rapport and trust and credibility, and then sharing what you've got that can help them get the results they want. And so then I help them with the email sequence that will go. So there's 12 emails that go out between the first time when they opt in and they get
Hmm.
their free lead magnet, to 2 months later when they get the last one of those 12, and all of those. So most of my clients start getting sales about the sixth or seventh email, because of the way everything's structured. So I help them structure those. And again, we seed them with testimonials and stories, and all these other things, as well as, like I said before, every single email has an ask, but an ask does not mean that we're asking them for money.
Absolutely, that's golden feedback. I wonder, Sue, when somebody wants to work with you, what is the application process, and how do they know if they're a good fit to work with you?
The first process is I don't really screen them if they want to get the online course.
Hmm.
That's kind of self-motivated, and there's a Facebook group, so there's some additional trainings in there, but I've made it so it's really concise in this group. But if they want to work with me and have me actually, so I've got a program where for 5 weeks we will sit down and hunker down, and in that 5 weeks we will get their bio, we will get their lead magnet, and we will get their talk completely done. And that there is a form that they fill out, because um, I don't want to take money from people who aren't serious about doing it, or all of a sudden they don't have the time or something like that. If we don't get it done quickly, I know that they're going to fall off and they're going to lose interest, and that's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the people that they want to serve. So there is an application process there.
Absolutely. So when they do want to find you, where will they go online?
If they go to SueHenryTalks.com, they would find me there. If they want to get the free handout that I just mentioned, if they go to SueHenryTalks.com/handout, that will get them the handout, and then they'll get a little bit more information from there. And then they'll be on my email list, and then they'll get information about the online course and everything down the road. And if they personally want to work with me, they go into SueHenryTalks.com, under products, there is a tab that says work with me, and it'll walk them through the process there, where at least we could jump on the phone to find out if it's a good fit for both of us before they make any kind of a decision.
Thank you very much for sharing. Now, everybody who's on the call today, as is traditional, I will be making some links available back to Sue and her wonderful program. Now, this will be coming out in various formats across different platforms. So no matter where you find this podcast, you will find the links back to Sue. Sue, thank you so very much for spending some time with me today on the My Future Business Show.
And thank you so much, Rick, for having me. I hope that the listeners, if they've got any kind of a dream at all of speaking on stage, but fears getting in the way, I hope that they figure out a way to let their passion become greater than their fear, so they can serve in the way that their heart desires.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.